Acting is an ancient art form. Since Thespis first stepped on stage in 534 BC, it has grown and evolved to cater to the forever-changing taste of audiences. With the birth of film in the late 19th century, cinema has helped immortalize some of the greatest performances man has ever seen.
I've abandoned my child! I've abandoned my boy!
George here doesn't cotton too much to body talk. And Paunchy here isn't too happy when the conversation moves to muscle.
With rapid technological growth, things could only get better, right?
Gay.
No.
Have we reached the end of acting as we've known it? So how did we get here? How did we, as a society, fall from the graces of A Streetcar Named Desire all the way to He's All That?
Why'd you just take off your shirt? I don't know.
Well, I think in order to find out, we need to go on a little bit of an adventure. This is the Lumiere brothers' The Waterer, Watered. Released in 1895, it is one of the world's first narrative films. Although this is a huge leap forward in the history of cinema, I think it's safe to say this film isn't up to the standards of most modern audiences. I mean, it's no Andrew Garfield cameo. For a comedy, it's aged quite well, but I think it lacks the complexities and nuances that were slowly introduced into films after its creation. And the same could be said about the acting. See, acting up until this point has been around for centuries, but the introduction of acting in front of a camera was not something these performers were trained to do. In most films before the 1950s, you often find these theatrically trained actors overperforming for the camera. They were so used to exaggerating their expressions and gestures for the stage that they just naturally did this in front of a camera. Of course, there were some exceptions to this, but it wasn't until the method became popular in the States that we saw this shift from over-exaggerated theatrical performances to the more subtle and natural performances that we often prefer today. Now, a quick disclaimer, method acting is still around today, but whenever we hear about it, it's usually in context of the extreme measures that an actor may go to for a role.
Yeah.
What the method actually is Lee Strasberg's interpretation of Stanislavski's system. The actual term method is an oversimplified term for the American translation of the system. Strasberg wasn't the sole user of this new system. Other acting teachers like Stella Adler and Stanford Meisner taught their own ways of using it. The goal of the system was to make the performance come from within, rather than just rely on the material. So as film language evolved throughout the 20th century, the introduction of the method on screen naturally suited the demands for modern audiences. Now, it'll come as no surprise to you that since the mid-20th century, a lot has changed. We've cycled through dozens of film movements, and things are constantly evolving and changing. But as we entered the new millennium, a new challenger approached that nobody was prepared for. With the birth of social media in the early 2000s, the way that people consume media forever changed. Platforms like YouTube gave anybody the ability to share their content with the entire world for free. These videos didn't require a cast, crew, or budget or anything. All you needed was your own video camera and a good personality. You no longer had a say in this bubble that casting departments put you in. You could be anything you wanted, even if that meant playing a 6-year-old in your 20s.
Hey, it's Fred!
Later, we'll see this new breed of content creators born out of the short-lived video sharing app, Vine.
What the fuck is up, Kyle?
Vine paved the way for this craze of short-form content, which we're still living in. Vine started the careers of people who are now near A-list celebrity status. Some have moved to YouTube, others have moved on to more successful ventures after the app's demise. But arguably the most important impact that Vine has had on our society is a sound effect. So now we've come to the end of our history lesson, and I'm not going to talk about TikTok's history because we've all lived through it. But what can be found in hashtag acting? To sum it up, it's a bunch of creators looking to get exposure for their acting work. To nobody's surprise, what dominates this hashtag is a bunch of people lip-syncing to videos from their favorite TV shows or movies with these exaggerated facial expressions.
Stay away from me! Wendy! Stay away! Darling, light of my life. I'm not gonna hurt you. You didn't let me finish my sentence. I said, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains.
For people who are trying to get exposure for their acting work, these videos kind of feel like a step backwards. Unless they're trying to book a silent film, speaking the words of a given scene is half the job. You can only do so much with all these exaggerated, weird facial expressions. Then you have these acting challenges where you basically have a challenger perform one part of a scene, and the goal is to have someone else do edit with the other part of the scene.
Excuse me, you can't go past here. I'm sorry, but everyone in the car crash is dead. You can hear your brother's voice. Are you sure he was in the crash?
If actors want to use TikTok to demonstrate their skills, this is probably the most effective way. It's like this new form of self-taping, which is kind of interesting, but it can also be pretty cringe. But my absolute favorite subgenre of the hashtag is this. I'm not even sure what to call this, but if I were to give some sort of analysis as to what this is, I think it's hashtag acting's thirst trap, along with this.
Do you want me back? Say it. I want you back.
TikTok is saturated with so much content that you can't help but cringe at like 99% of it, especially since most of the videos are catered to an algorithm and are just trying to keep people engaged for 30 seconds, which is becoming increasingly harder to do with every passing day. I think the biggest problem with most of these videos is that they feel very amateur. A lot of these TikTok actors don't really connect with any of the material that they're trying to recreate, and they're more focused on making these big exaggerated facial expressions, which don't even work most of the time. There's little to no hint of anything genuine actually going on behind the performance. They don't know how to work with a camera. They think the bigger I go, the more views I'll get. And honestly, that's probably true most of the time. That's why we have those annoying greatest performance of all time videos where it just shows that clip of Hugh Jackman from Prisoners and then Jake Gyllenhaal in Nightcrawler. It's 2022, guys. We know that acting equals anger, screaming, yelling. Come on. At the end of the day, this is fine. None of it's really that deep. If people enjoy this content, there's really no harm in that, even if I think it's stupid. The only person this really hurts is the performer. The person is using the app to get discovered, and they realize that the algorithm favors those exaggerated performances, then they're not really putting their best foot forward by constantly making those similar videos. Would you rather make content that does numbers or videos that help better your craft? Which actually leads me into my final question. Is this the death of acting? The people that rake in the big bucks on TikTok typically lack any form of skill. I don't think this is news. And if those are people that are getting the views and the glory, what does that mean for the people that actually devote time to their craft? Well, nothing really, because as we saw through the evolution of film, theater, and acting, one thing hasn't changed. It's always been a business. Addison Rae signed a multi-picture deal with Netflix. The executives don't care how much she's been acting or how much she's been working on her craft. They just know that she gets a bunch of likes while dancing in her living room. Same thing with The Rock. He can't really act, but he's built an entire career around being this badass, ripped, nice guy. So everyone just likes him. And the movies make so much money. Unless it's Black Adam. So no, acting is not dead, acting will not die, but it will continue to change and evolve over time. Like with the continual rise of digitally altered performances and virtual productions. But similar to TikTok, we don't need to be scared of these changes. Rather, we can embrace them as they help us create new things. TikTok allows us to showcase our talents like never before. And even if some people use it to pump numbers rather than showcase their actual talents, it's proven to work before. But ultimately, if you do devote enough time to your craft, whether that's lip syncing your favorite scene from Perks of Being a Wallflower or years of theatrical training, the hard work will eventually pay off. So yes, TikTok acting is pretty dumb. But who knows? Maybe we could find the next Humphrey Bogart on there.
In all the towns in all the world, she walks into mine.